Hello, everyone, and welcome on back into the Bears. Today, I am reviving my true crime discussions with you guys here on the YouTubes because I definitely want to rebrand and do more content on this channel that's more like one-off videos, and true crime has always been my passion. For those of you who don't know, I am 2 semesters away from having a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I'm super excited. I've always been passionate about criminal justice. It started with the Casey Anthony trial, here in Florida, and ever since then, I've just been very passionate about true crime. I want to do more and discuss more of these cases with you that I find intriguing. The next one I definitely want to do, and you guys should look forward to, is the "Don't Fuck with Cats" documentary, because I think that is very important to talk about the early signs of a murderer, how you could potentially even stop a serial killer in the making, and that is exactly what they did. I also want to talk about the Stephen Avery case that has also been shown on Netflix and documentary series. But not really talk about Stephen Avery because I'm not truly sure myself about how that happened. I don't necessarily believe some aspects of the prosecution, and I don't necessarily believe some aspects of the defense. But his nephew is what I do believe. I do believe his nephew was wrongfully convicted for sure. There was no doubt in my mind. I did a whole speech about it in my speech class about that case, and I did really well on that speech, to the point where I got 100 on that, and it even prompted my professor to pull me aside and tell me I should become a lawyer. I'm not going to, because I want to be with the victims and be a victim advocate for sure. But I do still have passion with following cases, researching cases, and likes. So, one of those, during my vacation, I watched the Hulu series on Candy Montgomery. Basically, who Candy is she is a suburban housewife. She goes to church. She has two kids. She has a husband who is very well in his career. They live in a nice house and live in a nice, quaint life in the suburbs. And during her life, she got into affairs with other men and cheated on her husband. Because apparently, according to her, her husband was not doing so well in the bedroom department. Sex has been stale, and she wanted excitement. And I think that's where this whole entire case starts. So, where this all starts is the 1970s. Her best friend and pastor gets a divorce. And eventually, she wants what she has. She wants a new, exciting relationship and a great sex life. Because her pastor also shares with her very smutty romance, kind of on the porn side of novels, and she wants that excitement. She wants that romantic life, that passion, that newfound love and sex, and that's what she wants. So, because her best friend is in a new relationship and she's very acquainted with it and really likes it, she has an affair with a man named Alan Gore. This is him. They're on the same volleyball team. How they meet. They also go to the same church. And her daughter is friends with his daughter, so they do know each other. And she's very, she finds him attractive. So, she's very, may I add, forward, and blunt when it comes to, pressing that she wants to have an affair. So, after a volleyball game, she gets into the car with him. She kisses him and says, "I want to have an affair." They meet up. He says yes. They meet up. and they discussed some rules. And some of those being your typical, I wouldn't say typical, but if you watch a lot of like those type of those shitty romance movies where they have an affair, they have like these rules where it's like, we have to do this, this, and this, and if you fall in love with me, it's done, right? Those were her rules with Alan. And I believe Alan definitely went on this affair because he might have not been attracted to Betty. He might not have been, their marriage was on the down. And she was doing some very different choice things that I don't think he agreed with, especially when it came to parenting. The foster child incident that they had was definitely part of it, where she very much overly parented this foster kid, and to the point where this foster kid really hated them and wanted out of that house. And I think because of that, and she also felt sexually awkward with him, and it probably wasn't great sex in the bedroom. But I think the main reason he definitely wanted to have an affair is because he felt attracted to Candy, and I just don't think he was attracted to his wife much anymore. So they had their affair for about six months, and eventually it ended for, I feel like, 3 reasons. A, Candy felt like she was falling in love with him, so that was their rule. She would end it. B, eventually Betty and Alan went to this like marriage retreat, which is basically marriage counseling, and they were starting to get through some problems that they were having and got their marriage back on the up and up. Mainly, Betty also told him that she had an affair at one point with him, so she was very much in the same boat. So that was number 2. Number 3, I also believe it was also Betty was pregnant, and I think he felt bad. And we'll get into that pregnancy again. So eventually they ended it. During that time that after Alan ended it, she and Alan ended. She had another affair with her best friend's husband. It came out in the trial that it wasn't the only affair. So that also strengthened her case in the trial because it let the jury know that it wasn't because of Alan that she murdered her, and that it probably made her self-defense claim more believable. Which leads us to the murderer, Betty Dorr. She murders Betty Dorr 41 times and hits her with an axe 41 times, and mainly on her face and head, which definitely means it was personal, and that Betty was murdered by someone who knew her, because it was brutal. During this time, Alan was out of town for a work trip, so usually the trope of suspecting that your husband did the murder was not happening in this case. He was out of town, he had work statements, he had an alibi pretty much, so they couldn't pin it on Alan. They probably did think about it though. So, the trial starts to happen. And the main thing that she claims is self-defense. This was her claim. Self-defense. So why did the jury believe it? That is what I was asking myself as I was watching this trial unfold during the episode. I was just like, how in the world can she claim self-defense when she hit her 41 times? Well, her defense attorney was apparently way better than the prosecution. This was her defense attorney's plan the entire time, was to pin it on self-defense. And this picture right here was part of it. According to Candy said Betty swung the axe down to the floor, striking her toe. So, she's got wounds on her from Betty. But that may not have been what played out. What they showed in the show during the time that she when she murdered her, in the show we showed Candy dropping the axe. For whatever reason. So, during that time, at some point, she pushed Betty to the ground, or they got into a tussle. They got into a fight. I think Betty slapped her. first. Then they got into a tussle. They both were on the ground fighting each other, and Candy went and grabbed the axe, and she was and Betty was still on the floor. She had her pinned on. She was still on the floor, and Candy would take the axe, and when she swung at her to cut her, at some point she would start bringing the axe down and inflicting herself with wounds. And she also did that with her toe. She sliced her toe open, and then she would hit herself with the axes, like the blunt parts of the axe. Like when she would bring it up, she hit herself and got a bruise on her shoulders and stuff from just being very rageful with the axe and not being able to control it very well. I think that's more plausible and what happened, but I can see how a jury could paint this picture because there really wasn't any other witnesses alive that could testify besides Betty. And also the investigator, his testimony kind of got sour when the defense lawyer came up and asked him, but could this happen? And the investigator told them, yeah, it could have happened where she instigated the violence. I did want to show you guys the actors and the actual people. I think they were pretty spot on, if I'm honest with you. So, this is Candy Montgomery, and this is Jessica Bild. Spot on. Like it. This is Melanie Linsky, and this is Betty Gore, the actual Betty Gore. This is the actress who played her. Again, spot on. Very well. This is where I don't believe is great. I think Pablo looks way too good to play Alan Gore, but that's just me. I don't know. I don't see this. I don't see I could see how she found him attractive, but I can see way more with this guy. But this guy, and this was, again, Pat Montgomery, and this was Timothy Simmons, who played him. I think, again, spot on pretty well. They did a very good job at picking actors who looked just like the people who did it, or who were actually going through this in real life. So, how many times did Candy Montgomery stab Betty Gore? 41 times with a 3-foot-long axe. It is believed that 40 of the strikes took place while Betty's heart was still beating. She was struck 28 times in the head alone. So horrible. Absolutely horrible. Ironically enough, she killed her on Friday the 13th. Right after Friday the 13th was released in theaters. How ironic. Axe murder. Right after an axe murder movie appeared in theaters. During the researching of the Hulu show, it was learned that at least one of the blows to Betty Gore was by a team after she was deceased, arguably more. In the least Betty would have been long incapacitated before the 40th axe blow. The amount of overkill indicated that the axe murderer was in a state of rage, and it was likely a crime of passion. I could tell you that it was a crime of passion. It definitely was not a serial murder, and it was definitely not planned. She did that out of passion. I knew that from the start of watching the show. I was just like, yeah, this is a crime of passion. Candy did not plan on killing her. I think it just happened. This is one of the reasons why detectives initially suspected that Betty Gore's husband, Alan, might be responsible. When I saw Alan was out of the house and went on a work trip, I immediately did not think about going to Alan. It was because of the fact that this was a show about Candy Montgomery, and we already knew going into that she did it. But even if they didn't show in the beginning that she did do it and how she did it, I still wouldn't have went to the husband, because as soon as he said I was on a work trip, and I was out of town, I wouldn't have suspected Alan. I think that trope with always suspecting the husband of killing the wife is a little bit, while it is true a good majority of the time, there are definitely times where the husband really had nothing to do with it, and they really were just a distraught husband. But he had an alibi, so I was alright. Okay, he's on a work trip. His truck wasn't even there. Like, he didn't do it. He wasn't even in the house. He was really away. They did have a baby. She was home taking care of the baby. Bethany was asleep in her crib at the time of the murder, which is what we'll get into a little bit later. When neighbors forced to went in the door home and discovered Betty's body, young Bethany was awake and crying in her crib. She was left. Candy, when after she cleaned up herself and tried cleaning up the murder, she didn't care about the baby. She just left that baby crying in her crib for, I believe, 10 or 12 hours. To the point where it was also shown that neighbors who did find her baby in the crib said she had lost her voice because of how much she was crying for her mother. Awful. Awful, awful, awful. Did Candy, part of the evidence was that she did leave a bloody thumbprint on the freezer door. I don't know why she was in the freezer. Investigators also discovered a bloody footprint made by a flip-flop in the laundry room. She stepped in blood. In addition, blood and hair were found in the shower, including that the killer had tried, indicating that the killer had tried to wash the blood off. She went into the shower and took a shower because she didn't also want to feel like she had to go back to the church, so she didn't want to show up bloody. So she took a shower. Why did Candy Montgomery kill Betty Dorr? Candy theory claims that she had left the church to go over to Betty's house, picked up a bathing suit for Betty's older daughter because the girls were having a sleepover at the Montgomery's house. She said that Betty 30 confronted her with regard to the extramarital affair she had with Betty's husband, Alan. Candy said she admitted to the affair and told Betty that it had been over for some time, technically over 7 months. It's been a while since they had an affair, because he found out that she was pregnant. Candy said that Betty had then tried to attack her with an axe she retrieved from the garage, swinging down on the floor and striking Candy's toe. This is another thing that I don't believe. If I'm trying to murder you because I'm mad at you for having an affair with my husband, I wouldn't be striking at the floor and at your toe. I'd be striking at you and trying to kill you. But I guess it could also be spun that she was trying to fire a warning shot, I guess you could say, or warn her like, hey, I'm gonna try and kill you if you don't leave right the fuck now, and stop having my daughter over and have a sleepover at your house. I don't feel comfortable with it. So, they wrestled for control of the weapon, which Candy was eventually able to get a hold of. Candy also sustained bruises to her head during the struggle. I do believe that could be a possibility of the struggle for sure. She claimed that she struck Betty with an axe in self-defense. Was Candy Montgomery found guilty? No, she was not. She was acquitted. The defense team argued that Candy Montgomery's alleged murder of Betty Dorr was an act of self-defense, which is what Candy had tried to claim. At first, it seemed that this was a weak argument given the severity of Betty Dorr's injury and the fact that Candy had struck her with the axe 41 times. I had the same feeling. Continuing after she was dead, however, the defense brought in a psychiatrist. I think this is where the case definitely turned more into the defense's favor, and the prosecution totally sizzled at this point. I believe expert witnesses are extremely crucial, but her defense lawyer, I will give him some props. While he did defend a murderer, I still do not believe this is self-defense. I think there's more to it than this case, and we'll never know because Betty's not allowed to tell her side of the story. Did she really initiate the violence? I know she slapped her, which I can see that happening. But did that escalate into what happened? I just don't find it in me, especially how she was also, it was hinting in the show that I don't know if they ever aired this out in trial, if there's an autopsy report that showed that she was pregnant, but she had a pregnancy, she was taking pregnancy tests because she believed that she might have had be pregnant with their third child, and her daughter was maybe only 5 or 6 months at the time. So I don't know if they ever I couldn't find anything where if it's stated that Betty was pregnant possibly with their third child. But that could also be why she might not have, where she probably wouldn't have struggled as much, because she knew she was pregnant with her third baby. So I don't know how much I believe the whole she initiated the violence. But regardless, at first it seemed that this was a weak argument given the severity of Betty Dora's injury and the fact that Candy had struggled with an axe 41 times, continued even after she was dead. However, the defense brought in a psychiatrist from Houston who had evaluated Candy, including putting her under hypnosis. The psychiatrist testified that Candy had experienced what is called a dissociative event, suggesting that the altercation with Betty triggered a psychological reaction in her and she became unaware of what she was doing, essentially losing herself in a blind rage. I believe the blind rage, right? I believe this 1000%. But the dissociative event, I know and I understand that everyone's trauma can be different, but this trauma that Candy has seems so insignificant that it would cause her this type of problem. But this was her defense. So the psychiatrist explained that Candy had been struck with a sharp instrument when she was a child by her mother. She did let out that part. It was by her mother, which left her bleeding badly. As she cried out, her mother shook her and then raised her finger to her lips and said, "Shh." Candy claimed that Betty made the same gesture and sound during their altercation, more than likely because her baby was sleeping in another room and she didn't want to wake the baby. That's probably why she did that. They didn't show it in the show. At one point she did it. Maybe it was after the slap that she said shh because of the baby, and then that triggered the altercation. I don't know. And that triggered the whole axe thing, or why she... I don't know. The whole entire thing is still very, very hard to believe with anything that Candy says, in all honesty, but it's believable, right? A jury could easily believe this, which is what the psychiatrist explained that caused Candy to snap. Candy supposedly had a dissociative reaction in which she entered into a non-lucid state of rage as she struck Betty with the axe. The true version from the jury deliberated for, this is what shocked me, 4.5 hours. That is extremely short for a jury to go deliberate on evidence in a murder case. 4.5 hours? They must have just not believed a single shit the prosecution was pointing out, and they probably didn't, they probably believed her. Now, granted, we don't know how the trial went and how she proceeded to she did testify. We don't know how she acted in front of the jury when she was giving her testimony of the events that happened. She went into great detail about what happened, and she even mentioned the psychiatrist thing in her testimony. But you also had the psychiatrist who said it too in his testimony. So, maybe she was just believable. Maybe the jury felt bad for her, and felt like it was self-defense because of the fact that she had that dissociative event, and that maybe they did believe that she struck first, because one of the things that the prosecution or the defense team did ask the detective, when could it have Betty struck first, because there was offensive and obviously defensive wounds on both of them. So, and the investigator did say it's a possibility, and I think the jury used that, the psychiatrist and Candy's testimony, and ran with it to get the non-guilty verdict and acquit her of this heinous murder. But 4.5 hours? I don't know. It just seems so short for a jury to deliberate on a murder case. A lot of the articles say the same thing. The jury was of 9 women and 3 men, and gave her a non-guilty verdict. Pat Montgomery, I would like to say that he did eventually divorce her. I think what also helped Candy, like I mentioned earlier, was that she did cheat on another man after Alan. So she did have a second affair after Alan. I don't know if she had another one or 3, but that did come up during the trial, that she had another affair, which also might have helped her get a non-guilty verdict, because it does show that she might not have intended to go to Betty's house to murder her because of Alan, and that she didn't just have an affair with Alan and was only in love with Alan. It showed that she was also having an affair with other men. It all kind of fit in an ironic way that happened, but I think that part as well, I think that might have been a huge part as to why they believed her story, and that it wasn't just she went to go to Alan's house to have another affair. I don't even think the prosecution found out about that, nor did they bring it up. So I think that also definitely favored her that she had another affair after Alan. But a lot of the other ones, other articles mentioned the same thing. I couldn't find a transcript about the test with her testimony. I would have loved to see how she spun the story. But overall, what I think helped her get this non-guilty verdict is the fact that she had the psychiatrist, hypnotist specifically. Alan didn't seem like he blamed her for it all. Alan seemed like he was trying to defend her, in all honesty, and I think the prosecution wasn't expecting that. It also did show some clips of Alan Gore giving testimony, and it just seemed like he believed that she couldn't have done that to Betty, and that she wouldn't have done that to Betty, almost to the point where he just didn't believe that she did it. So, even though the evidence was heavily stacked against her, her husband also testified as well, and this might have also helped her at this point. They did show her husband testifying, and that he still loved her. That he didn't believe that she would do this on purpose. That she wouldn't. That she was a caring, loving mother, and basically vouched for her character. I think that also helped her case. A lot of this, she had so many men wrapped around her finger. I wouldn't say so many, but she had two important men wrapped around her finger that gave her very good testimony in her favor, that also probably led to the non-guilty verdict. Do I agree with this verdict? I still don't believe that that's what truly happened. I don't believe that because Betty was technically a little bit bigger than her, that she would have power over Candy. Candy worked out. Candy had volleyball. She had more strength to her than she thinks. She looks like a pale, frail woman, but in all honesty, I don't believe that. I believe just because Betty was a little bit on the heavier side, that she should have so much control over Candy. I think that's a bit of nonsense and a stretch. Candy has worked out. She's done all of that. I don't believe that for a second. And I also don't believe her telling. I think it just favors her light too much, and that she definitely left some details out. And it's like, but when did the happen, right? When did that happen? Was it after she slapped you? Was it after she punched you, after you pushed each other to the floor? When did the happen? I would love to have seen more about this and have like a transcript to really see like how this could have happened, but I don't know. I don't really think the non-guilty verdict was correct. I don't think that the self-defense is a thing. I do believe the rage. I could see it happening, but in all honesty, I just don't agree with this verdict. But I think I could see how she won the case. I do see how she won the case. But yeah, I think what happened to Betty is awful. I think she was pregnant with a third child, so she basically murdered a mother and an unborn baby. So that is just sad and horrible and ridiculous that she did this. I think, in all honesty, I think Candy, after her and Alan split, she should have never even kept the relationship with at all going. I think it just antagonized Betty and made her feel even less about herself. So, overall, I think Candy Montgomery murdered her. It was definitely a crime of passion. I don't think she did it on purpose, definitely a crime of passion, 100% sure. I don't think it was planned. I don't think it was intended. I don't even think she had that thought going into her house. I think it was definitely just a crime of passion. And the slap started it all. So, that is going to be it for this discussion of the case. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this case. Who do you believe? Do you think Candy did it in self-defense? Do you think this verdict was correct? Do you think that she should have even been still in Betty's life? I sure as hell don't. I think there's a lot of ways this whole entire horrible crime could have been dealt with. And yeah, leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more of this. I'm not going to be doing just true crime. I'm still going to be doing gaming stuff. And you can also follow me on Twitch for live streams and so on and so forth. All of my links will be in the description down below. And if you made it this far, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion about Candy Montgomery. I think this is where it's wrong. This case is very gruesome, and in all honesty, us as a public with how long ago this was, and Betty is not allowed to tell her side of the story, obviously, I don't think we will ever know what truly happened in that garage room, in that laundry room that they were fighting in, what truly happened during that fight and altercation. We'll never know. So, that is the be it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned and subscribe for more true crime series, gaming stuff, and whatever other discussions I want to talk about. Hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you all again in the barracks very soon.